أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Welcome to our Tafseer lesson. Today we are going to read from verse number 237 of Surah Baqarah. وَإِن طَلَّقْتُمُوهُنَّ مِنْ قَبْلِ أَن تَمَسُّوهُنَّ وَقَدْ فَرَضْتُمْ لَهُنَّ فَرِيضَةً فَنِصْفُ مَا فَرَضْتُمْ إِلَّا أَن يَعْفُونَ أَوْ يَعْفُوَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ عُقْدَةُ النِّكَاحِ وَأَن تَعْفُوا أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَنْسَوْا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ بَصِيرٌ. And if you divorce them before consummation, but after the fixation of a dower for them, then the half of the dower is due to them unless they remit it, or the man's half is remitted by him in whose hands is the marriage tie, and the remission of the man's half is the nearest to righteousness. And do not forget liberality between yourselves, for Allah sees well all that ye do. Before these verses, we have read about the waiting period iddah of a widow, which is 4 months and 10 days. And then during iddah, there are some restrictions which are mentioned in verse 235. And then in 236, the case of a woman who is divorced, marriage is not consummated, and no dower is fixed. For such a woman, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned about mut'ah, means anything which is given to her as a gift. Now comes the case of a woman who is divorced. The marriage is not consummated, but a dower amount has been fixed. So it is very, very clear now from the rendering of this verse that if a person marries a woman, the dower amount has been fixed, say £1,000, for example, and because the marriage is not consummated, so she deserves only the half of the dower amount. And then it is said that even if that half, in that half, the woman, if she has received the full amount, then of course she is going to return back the half of the amount. Or, illa an yafun. There may be a case that a woman says that because the marriage is not consummated, why should I receive even this half? So she forsakes her right in this half. On the other hand, it may be like this, that the man who has paid the full amount and he deserves to receive back the half of the amount according to this ayah, but he forsakes his right in receiving back the half of the amount from the woman. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that just to forsake on his part his right, aqrabu lit-taqwa, that is nearer to taqwa. وَلَا تَنْسَوْا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. And then the ayah ends by this note, وَلَا تَنْسَوْا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. And do not forget liberality between yourselves. Al-Fadl, anything which is additional, that is called Al-Fadl. And when you are parting, try to part on good terms. Even if you have given a lot, you should not try to take it back. That is one thing. And the second thing which we understand from this ayah, that here it is said that though she deserves half of the amount, but if she forsakes her right in that half, that is allowed, or the person in whose hand is the tie of the marriage. Who is that person? Here we got two opinions. One opinion which I have already mentioned, that it is the husband. He is the one who got the tie of the marriage in his hand. It means that if he wants to divorce, he can divorce. The woman, on her part, if she wants to divorce, she has to ask for it, which is known as khula. So it means the person, the husband himself. But there is another opinion which is held by some of the jurists, that the person who got the tie of the marriage in his hand, that is the wali, or the guardian of the woman. So this dower amount, either it is forsaken by the woman or it is forsaken by the person who is the wali. But this second opinion is a weak opinion, because first of all, if we say that this half of the dower amount, which is now the right of the woman to take it, and she can leave it. And then we also say that it is the right of al-wali, the right of the guardian as well. One of them could forsake it. Here comes a bit of difficulty to understand that this dower amount is not the right of the wali, it is the right of the woman. Wali can't spend that amount at all, because this is something which is owned by the woman. So as long as it is the property of the woman, then how it should be, this right should be transferred to her guardian. So this is why the first opinion, which is that this part of the ayah, أو يعفو الذي بيده عقدة النكاح, that part of the ayah, that is that belongs to, or that is pertaining to the husband. وَلَا تَنْسَوْا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. We said that al-fadl is something additional. So this fadl, it could be understood in this way, that when the woman has left half of the amount to the husband, that is a fadl from her. And in the very same way, if the man has left the full amount of dower for her, that is a fadl from his side. And here we should also discuss about the amount of mahar which is recommendable in Sharia. We always hear about the dower amount of Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, which is known as Mahar Fatima. And you would find in some weddings that they don't write any amount except saying Mahar Fatima, that the dower amount is that of Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha. And it is something very amazing that in the subcontinent, India and Pakistan, they used to write 32 rupees, thinking that this is the Mahar Fatima. And when the very same people come to England, this 32 rupees turn into 32 pounds. And there is a hell of difference between the value of a pound and a rupee. So let us understand that this Mahr Fatima, if it is fixed, what it is, what is the amount? We know from the history, from the seerah, that the Prophet ﷺ asked Sayyidina Ali when the marriage was about to be conducted, what type of mahr he is going to pay to Sayyidina Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He said, "O Prophet of Allah, I got nothing except my shield, this iron shield." Now this iron shield is valued at 480 dirham. 480 dirham. Dirham is of course made of silver, unlike dinar, which is made of gold. So this 480 dirham is equal to 1,200 grams. So this is why we would say that anybody who wants to know about Mahr Fatima, he should find out the value of silver for a gram. And once you know the value of 1 gram silver, you will know about 1,200 gram silver's value as well. And of course, it is not a big amount at all in comparison to the gold. Now let us move to next ayah. That is ayah number 238 and 239. And both these ayat are about the prayer and the prayer at the time of any fear. 238 and 239. حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين. Guard strictly your habit of prayers, especially the middle prayer, and stand before Allah in a devout frame of mind. فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ فَرِجَالًا أَوْ رُكْبَانًا فَإِذَا أَمِنْتُمْ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَمَا عَلَّمَكُمْ مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ. If you fear an enemy, pray on foot or riding as may be most convenient. But when you are in security, celebrate Allah's praises in the manner He has taught you, which you knew not before. Here comes an emphasis upon the prayer itself. It would be also very important to note that after these two ayah, once again, there is a mention of a widow and how much time she can stay in the house of her deceased husband. And then there is a mention of mut'a, or the gift of enjoyment once again. So one thinks that how these ayat are arranged in this way, that there had been a discussion about talaq, and before talaq there were many related issues like suckling. And within that context comes an emphasis upon the prayer, guarding the prayer. So what is the relevance of these ayat here, ayat about the prayer, within the ayat of divorces, suckling, and the iddah of a widow? The answer is, these ayat here in that context, it shows one thing, and that is Sharia is to be taken as a whole. You can't take the part of Sharia and leave another part of Sharia. So by having these ayat in this context, we are reminded that the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a one complete set which covers the spiritual aspects of it and also the aspects of dealing, the worldly matters, jihads, fighting. All these things are interconnected with each other. So that is a reminder which is coming here. حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين. Now here, when we come to discuss about this emphasis upon the prayer and preserve your prayer, we understand that there are 5 prayers, but what is that middle prayer where there is more emphasis upon it? Guard your prayers and the middle prayer. So what is that middle prayer? There are many sayings about this middle prayer given by our Salaf. Each prayer could be a middle prayer. Just take any prayer. If you take Fajr prayer, then of course there are 2 prayers before it and 2 after it. Same is applicable to each one of the 5 prayers. All right, let us take some prayers individually. For example, a Fajr prayer, it could be said that Fajr prayer is the middle prayer. In what sense? That it is on the edge of the darkness of the night and the brightness of the day. Look at prayer itself. It got both elements of night prayer and the day prayers. The Sunnah of Fajr prayer is done secretly, like all the other Sunnah prayers of the daytimes. But the first 2 rak'ah of Fajr prayer is done loudly, like all the night prayers. The night prayers is Qiyamul Layl. We also know it by Tahajjud. And then before that is Isha prayer, that is also loud. So it has both elements, something from the night prayer and something from the day prayers. And some people, they also included the Friday prayer as well, Al-Jum'ah. And there is a very strong opinion about Asr prayer, that it should be Asr prayer because there are many ahadith which speak about the importance of Asr prayer. For example, the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar, Man fatathu salatul asr, ka'annama wutira maluhu wa ahluhu. The person whose Asr prayer is missed, as if something of his property and his family is gone, is missing. And it is also said that in the Mus'haf of Aisha, Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she said to the scribe of this surah, she said to him, read after or write after as-salatul wusta, hafiz wal salawati was salatul wusta, write salatul asr, salatul asr, asr prayer. And it means it has been inserted after salatul wusta as explanatory note. And it is also said that there was a similar mushaf with Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala anha, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But of course, she did not insert it. So that insertion came by the instruction of Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. That was about the guarding of the prayers. And then the end of this ayah is وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. Stand for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala qaniteen, in a devout frame of mind. So the word qunut could be taken in different ways, or you can say that it has different meanings as well. The word qunut itself. The famous meaning is that qunut is qaniteen, means khashi'in, that stand in the prayer with all khushu', with all concentration. And it is normally a long type of standing, and if you are in ruku, a long type of ruku as well. So that is one meaning of qunut. And then it also means dua, the supplication of the Prophet ﷺ. And we know that in one incident, when 70 qurra have been killed by the non-believers, the Prophet ﷺ has done qunut in his Fajr prayer for about 21 days. And that qunut was a dua against them, a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to destroy them. So that is also qunut. So qunut, another meaning is to be regular at one's prayer, trying to do it all the times, not leaving it at any time. So these are the famous meanings of qunut. According to some, qunut also means quietness, to keep quiet. And they say that this ayah was revealed when people came back from the migration of Habasha, Ethiopia. Till that time, they used to speak during the prayer. But after this ayah, they were told to keep quiet. وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ. So that also has been said. But we know that this is not very, very clear about this ayah. So to be quiet in the prayer, that is proved from the different ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. The second ayah in this connection is فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ فَرِجَالًا أَوْ رُكْبَانًا. If you are fearful, then pray either you are on your foot or you are riding your camels, your horses. What is that prayer, which is known as Salatul Khawf? We can say that prayer has started. The start of the prayer was on individual basis. And then comes Salatul Jama'ah, the prayer in congregation. And then comes the prayer at the time of the fear. One is very obvious, that is the fear of an attack by the enemy. So if there is such type of fear, prayer is not going to be neglected at all. And this shows such an esteemed importance of the prayer that even when you are fighting, you are in jihad, at the time of the prayer, you have to manage your prayer in the way which has been described in Surah Nisa, Ayah 101. So this prayer is known as Salatul Khawf. So the word khawf is used about this prayer, فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ فَرِجَالًا أَوْ رُكْبَانًا. This could be because of any other reason. Might be people are traveling in a jungle where there is a fear of the beast around them. They might be hit by a flood, and they have to take shelter on the top of a mountain or in a very secluded place. Anyhow, in such a situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that you are allowed to pray whether you are on your foot or whether you are riding. فَإِذَا أَمِنْتُمْ فَاذْكُرُوا اللَّهَ كَمَا عَلَّمَكُمْ مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ. And because that prayer which has been shortened, as we are going to read in the Ayah 101 of Surah An-Nisa, we have done this prayer in short. After that, to compensate that shortness in the prayer, don't forget to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a lot. So this is why the zikr of Allah is mentioned here. Now let us come to Ayah 101, which speaks about Salatul Khawf. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَإِذَا ضَرَبْتُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَقْصُرُوا مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ إِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَن يَفْتِنَكُمُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِنَّ الْكَافِرِينَ كَانُوا لَكُمْ عَدُوًّا مُبِينًا. When you travel through the earth, there is no blame on you if you shorten your prayers, for fear the unbelievers may attack you. For the unbelievers are unto you open enemies. The beginning word which shows وَإِذَا ضَرَبْتُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. الضرب في الأرض, that means traveling. So it means actual ruling is related to the traveling. So this is why shortening of the prayer is for any traveling. And also if it is a Salatul Khawf. So the next condition in this ayah, إِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَنْ يَفْتِنَكُمُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. If you fear that those people who deny faith, kuffar people, they might put you into a fitna, into a persecution, then you can shorten your prayer. So this is the condition which is known as conditions according to the situation when the ayat were revealed. But it is a general ruling, because the Prophet ﷺ used to shorten the prayer in each traveling. So it is not related to a fighting or jihad all the time. Now how to read this prayer, how to offer this prayer, that is in next ayah 102. وَإِذَا كُنْتَ فِيهِمْ فَأَقَمْتَ لَهُمُ الصَّلَاةَ فَلْتَقُمْ طَائِفَةٌ مِّنْهُمْ مَعَكَ وَلْيَأْخُذُوا أَسْلِحَتَهُمْ فَإِذَا سَجَدُوا فَلْيَكُونُوا مِنْ وَرَائِكُمْ. When thou, O Messenger, are with them and standest to lead them in prayer, let one party of them stand up in prayer with thee, taking their arms with them. وَلْتَأْتِ طَائِفَةٌ أُخْرَى لَمْ يُصَلُّوا وَلْيُصَلُّوا مَعَكَ وَلْيَأْخُذُوا حِذْرَهُمْ وَأَسْلِحَتَهُمْ. When they finish their prostration, let them take their position in the rear, and let the other party come up which has not yet prayed, and let them pray with thee, taking all precautions and bearing arms. وَدَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَوْ تَغْفُلُونَ عَنْ أَصْلِحَتِكُمْ أَوْ عَنْ أَصْلِحَتِكُمْ وَأَمْتِعَتِكُمْ فَيَمِيلُونَ عَلَيْكُمْ مَيْلَةً وَاحِدَةً. The unbelievers wish if you were negligent of your arms and your baggages, to assault you in a single rush. ولا جناح عليكم إن كان بكم أذى من مطر أو كنتم مرضى أن تضعوا أسلحتكم وخذوا حذركم. But there is no blame on you if you put away your arms because of the inconvenience of rain or because you are ill. But take every precaution for yourselves. For the unbelievers, Allah hath prepared a humiliating punishment. إِنَّ اللَّهَ أَعَدَّ لِلْكَافِرِينَ عَذَابًا مُهِينًا. That is the last part of the ayah which I have just translated, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared a very humiliating punishment for the denier of the faith. Now, by this descriptions of Salatul Khawf, we come to know that prayer is so important that it is not going to be neglected even when you are fighting. Now, this specific description of the prayer, that is one way of praying. And it was to be understood that it speaks about the presence of the Prophet ﷺ with the believers at the time of the fighting. When it is said that when you lead the prayer, a party of the believers with their arms with them, they stand behind you. And there is another party which is standing behind them, guarding them with their arms. And the word khudhu hidrakum is repeated. Take your precautions, take your precautions. So the way of offering this prayer would be like this, that the first party, which is just behind the Prophet ﷺ, would pray one rak'ah behind the Prophet, because the prayer is shortened. If it is Zohar, Asr and Isha, it is shortened from 4 to 2 rak'ah. So they are going to just pray one rak'ah, and after one rak'ah, the Prophet would wait for them sitting, and this party is going to finish their second rak'ah, and after finishing their second rak'ah and saying salam, they will retreat. And the party which were waiting behind them, they would come in front, and the Prophet ﷺ would stand up for the second rak'ah, and this second party is going to pray this rak'ah with the Prophet. And eventually the Prophet would finish his second rak'ah, sit in tashahhud, and wait for them. So this second party would finish their second rak'ah and come to sit with the Prophet, behind the Prophet in tashahhud, until he says salam. So what do we understand? That each party got an excellence of praying behind the Prophet in one rak'ah. Each party got one rak'ah with the Prophet, one rak'ah of their own. And at the very same time, the party is still guarding behind them. So, this is the way, this is a very particular way. One thing is that here is the Prophet ﷺ. Everybody wants to pray behind him. So this is why this type of prayer, which is offered turn by turn, is given here. And this also shows that the warriors are facing the enemy. So this is why the prayer is held in such a way that there is a party behind the praying warriors guarding them. So that is a very specific description of Salatul Khawf. But does it mean that this is the only way? No, that is not the only way. Nowadays, with the great numbers of the armies and warriors are deployed everywhere in the battlefield, the situation is totally different. Sometimes they are not facing the enemy at all. So this is why we can say that each group should be given this opportunity to pray behind their imam, 2 rak'ah together. So there would be many prayers offered each in each and every place behind their imam. And here I could recall the people in Hajj, even in Arafah, not all the people would be behind the imam in the mosque, which is at the edge of Arafat. So there are people who are praying behind their imam in each and every tent. And if tent is not available, you would find the people praying behind their imam of their group, anywhere in Arafat. Same type of situation is seen in Muzdalifah when they come for Maghrib and Isha prayer together. You will find jama'at everywhere. People are praying. Whoever is ready after doing wudu, they would assemble and they would offer their prayer. And of course, Maghrib is not shortened, but Isha is shortened. So they would be praying Maghrib and then Isha, which is shortened. And this ayah of Salatul Baqarah, it says very clearly that if you are in the state of fear, then you are allowed to pray whether you are on your feet or you are traveling. Now we move to verse number 240. وَالَّذِينَ يُتَوَفَّوْنَ مِنْكُمْ وَيَذَرُونَ أَزْوَاجًا وَصِيَّةً لِأَزْوَاجِهِمْ مَتَاعًا إِلَى الْحَوْلِ غَيْرَ إِخْرَاجٍ فَإِنْ خَرَجْنَ فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِيمَا فَعَلْنَ فِي أَنفُسِهِنَّ مِنْ مَعْرُوفٍ وَاللَّهُ عَزِيزٌ حَكِيمٌ. Those of you who die and leave widows should bequeath for their widows a year's provision and residence. But if they leave the residence, there is no blame on you for what they do with themselves, provided it is reasonable, and Allah is exalted in power and wise. Now that is very similar to the ayah which we have read before. That is ayah 234, where it has been given the waiting period or iddah period of a widow, which is 4 months and 10 days. And here it says, or we can say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given an additional advice, additional instruction in the very same chapter. Instead of saying that this ayah, وَالَّذِينَ يُتَوَفَّوْنَ مِنْكُمْ وَيَذَرُونَ أَزْوَاجًا وَصِيَّةً لِأَزْوَاجِهِمْ مَتَاعًا إِلَى الْحَوْلِ غَيْرَ إِخْرَاجٍ, instead of saying that this ayah was revealed first, which is ayah 240, which says that the widows have to be given a provision of 1 year, and 1 year was the iddah. And then it was abrogated by this ayah, which is placed before that, ayah number 234, which gives the waiting period as 4 months and 10 days. Instead of saying that, the best tafsir which I have read here, and that is also attributed to Mujahid one of the successors of the Sahaba, which says that first, the ayah which gives 4 months and 10 days iddah period, that was the ruling. And this ayah 240, that is a wasiyah, a bequest, which is recommended for the husbands to make it for their widows. That they should make a bequest, a will, for 1 year's provisions for their widows, for their wives. 1 year's provisions, and stay in the house of the deceased husband. Why? Because in Jahiliyyah, the widow has to stay for 1 year, but in a deserted place, in a hut, in very miserable conditions, just to show the grief and the loss which should be seen on herself. So it was a Jahiliyyah practice. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that if the husbands want some more favor for their deceased, for their surviving widows, then they should have this bequeath for them to have 1 year's provisions. Mata'an ila al-hawl. See the word wasiyatan li azwajihim. That is a wasiyah, that is a bequeath for their widows. Mata'an ila al-hawl, an enjoyment for 1 year's provision. Ghayra ikhraj, with clear-cut instruction that they should not be thrown out of these houses. Here comes the second part of this whole exercise. فَإِنْ خَرَجْنَا فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي مَا فَعَلْنَ فِي أَنفُسِهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Though there is a will by the husband that they can stay in their property for 1 year, but if they want to come out earlier, it means just after 4 months and 10 days, which is the iddah period, فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي مَا فَعَلْنَ فِي أَنفُسِهِنَّ مِنْ مَعْرُوفٍ. Then there is no sin upon them for what they do about themselves. And of course, it refers to remarriage. They are not allowed to remarry within the actual iddah period, which is 4 months and 10 days. But after that, the remaining period, they are allowed to stay in the same house. And there is enough provisions left by their husbands, the deceased husbands, for the whole period. So they can stay there. But if they want to leave, then they are allowed to leave. Now, this matter of wasiyah, that was very similar to the other ayah which speaks about a person leaving a bequest for his parents and kith and kin. And it has been mentioned before that, right? إذا حضر أحدكم الموت. That speaks about the person who is at the deathbed, and if he is about to die, then an instruction is given that he can leave a wasiyah for his parents and for his kith and kin, for his kutiba alaykum idha hadara ahadakum al-maut in taraka khayran al-wasiyatu lil-walidayn wal-aqrabin. Kutiba alaykum, it is recorded upon you when the death comes to you that you should leave a bequest for your parents and children, for your parents and your relatives. So this is also wasiyah, the word wasiyah. And here is also the word wasiyah. Later, when the ayat of Surah An-Nisa were revealed, where the portions of each and every year is given, then it is said that this ruling, which is given here in verse number 240, to leave a provisions for 1 year, that has been abrogated. So that got no link of abrogation with ayah number 234. But it is abrogated by the ayah 11 of Surah An-Nisa. يُوصِيكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي أَوْلَادِكُمْ لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنثَيَيْنِ. From here this ayah begins. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given his wasiyah, that what type of portion is given to each and every person in the family, giving the portions of the children, the sons, the daughters, mother and father, wives, then of course there is something which is left for the widows as well. So it means that there was no more need for a specific provisions for them. So this ayah, the ruling of, you can say the ruling for 1 year's provisions, to make wasiyah for that, that is abrogated by the verse of Surah An-Nisa, not by verse 234 of Surah Baqarah. I think that makes this matter very clear. And then comes once again the ruling about a gift which is left for the widows, which says, وَلِلْمُطَلَّقَاتِ مَتَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. For divorced women, provisions should be made on a reasonable scale. This is duty on the righteous. Is it just a repetition of the very same or similar verse before that, where it has been said in ayah 236, وَمَتِّعُوهُنَّ عَلَى الْمُوسِعِ قَدَرُهُ وَعَلَى الْمُقْتِرِ قَدَرُهُ, and give them a gift of enjoyment for a person with means according to his means, and for a poor person according to his means. Mata'an bil ma'ruf, and this enjoyment is in accordance with the norm of the society. Haqqan al muhsinin, and that is a right or a duty upon those people who do ihsan. It is said in some of the tafsir that some people might have said such words like this, that this is a duty upon a person if he wants to do, if he wants to be a muhsin, if he wants to do ihsan. So it is not an incumbent duty upon us. It is just ihsan, to do good to someone if you want to do it. To remove that ambiguity, this verse 241 says, وَلِلْمُطَلَّقَاتِ مَتَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ, that this is a haqq upon muttaqeen people, righteous people. So when it is said that to give enjoyment or the gift of enjoyment to the widow, to the divorces, and it is a haqq al-muttaqin, so it makes it very clear that those people who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they fulfill it, they do it. And we have to differentiate between something which is lawful and something which is given out of fadl and out of grace. So it is not such a thing which is going to be taken to the qadi. No, it is a matter of generosity among the members of the family. So this is why it will be right to say that it is a haqq which is due to al-muttaqin people those people who fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the end of this passage is 242, Ayah 242. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Thus does Allah make clear His signs to you in order that you may understand. Because there were so many rulings about different issues. So the end of the passage is that this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains His ayat. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. So you may have aql, intelligence, understanding of what is given to you. Now here, before we conclude, the previous verse which said about the wasiyah, about a bequest left by a husband for his wife to remain in his property for 1 year. We have said that it was a practice of Jahiliyyah that the women, they used to do this type of mourning for 1 year. And let me remind here that the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is very clear. It is not allowed for a woman who believes in Allah and the last day to do mourning upon anyone for more than 3 days, except for her husband, which is 4 months and 10 days. So that was a Jahiliyyah practice. And here I conclude with these lines of poetry of a very famous poet of Jahiliyyah, Labid. Labid became Muslim, but he is known as Mukhadram. Mukhadram means that he got Jahiliyyah and Islam, both periods. So this poet Labid, who lived 60 years in Jahiliyyah and 60 years in Islam, he is addressing his 2 daughters when he was about to die. So he said these lines of poetry. تَمَنَّ ابْنَتَايَ أَنْ يَعِيشَ أَبُوهُمَا وَهَلْ أَنَا إِلَّا مِنْ رَبِيعَةَ أَوْ مُضَرٍ فَإِنْ حَانَ يَوْمًا أَنْ يَمُوتَ أَبُوكُمَا فَلَا تَخْمِشَا وَجْهًا وَلَا تَحْلِقَا شَعْرًا إِلَى الْحَوْلِ ثُمَّ اسْمُ السَّلَامِ عَلَيْكُمَا وَمَنْ يَبْكِ حَوْلًا كَامِلًا فَقَدْ اعْتَذَرَ. These are the 3 lines. Let me give the translation. تَمَنَّ ابْنَتَايَ أَنْ يَعِيشَ أَبُوهُمَا. My 2 daughters wish that their father should remain alive. وَهَلْ أَنَا إِلَّا مِنْ رَبِيعَةَ أَوْ مُضَرٍ. I'm not an extraordinary person. I'm just one person, like a person from the tribe of Rabi'a or the tribe of Mudar. فَإِنْ حَانَ يَوْمًا أَنْ يَمُوتَ أَبُوكُمَا. So if a day comes when your father is going to die, فَلَا تَخْمِشَا وَجْهًا وَلَا تَحْلِقَا شَعْرًا. Then don't scratch your face and don't cut your hairs. إِلَى الْحَوْلِ ثُمَّ اسْمُ السَّلَامِ عَلَيْكُمَا. And that in this position you would stay for 1 year. ثُمَّ اسْمُ السَّلَامِ عَلَيْكُمَا. Then Assalamu alaikum upon you. It means that you have to leave the mourning. وَمَنْ يَبْكِ حَوْلًا كَامِلًا فَقَدْ اعْتَذَرَ. And the one who kept on crying and wailing for 1 complete year, فَقَدْ اعْتَذَرَ. He has given his excuse. It means that he has done his duty. And we have already said in our previous lesson that a woman who is a widow is going to go through the iddah period like a divorcee. Divorcee got around 3 months period for iddah, but for a widow, it is 4 months and 10 days. And there is something additional which is called ihdad. Ihdad, which means mourning. So that mourning is not ascribed to the divorcees. That should be understood very clearly. It is only for widows, because that is the right of the deceased husband, that she go through this mourning, which is to leave the beautification, wearing the jewelry, beautifying herself, and then not to leave the house except for a dire need. She must not travel. Any traveling which brings you the facility of shortening the prayer, this type of traveling should not be done by her. So it means that she can, within the town itself where she lives, she can move. If she has to fulfill some errands and she has to do some duties. This is a right of the man which she is going to fulfill. And here we come to the end of today's lesson. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.